I guess by now most of us know how YouTube comments work. Positive review, you are either paid off or you are a fanboy. Negative review, you are either paid off as well from another company to talk smack about this one, which I guess makes sense for a few people, or you are a hater. Objective review with pros and cons. And you are both, and worse, all together at the same time. Now, why am you actually even telling this? Well, just from my experience, this happens most often on Sony device reviews. I have no idea why, because that is something that I'm never gonna figure out. But I just say, I'm gonna do whatever I usually do, and you are gonna do what you think you have to do. But today, Sony Xperia XA2. The XA2 Ultra review will come in a few days. And I have to say, even though this device actually has a lot of potential and I like a lot of things about it, there are just a few things that we have to talk about. So let's just do that and start off with a size comparison. Let's just take, since I have the time, the iPhone X. As you can see, actually almost pretty much the same height and same width, even though the Sony is thicker. Of course, dimensions are something different, but that doesn't matter for now. Here, for example, the Samsung Galaxy A8, it is taller. It is, as you can see, just about as wide, similar thickness, and here is the big brother, the XA Ultra. You can see noticeably taller, obviously, since it has a noticeably bigger screen, but very, very similar design. So what have I to say about this design? First of all, I like the button placement. That's something that I like a lot. I don't like the notification that I just got right now. Also, the next thing, nice curves everywhere. It feels very nice in the hand. One-hand usability was also quite good. It was a little bit on the slippery side since the sides itself were a little bit slippery. But overall it feels good. Even though I have to say that the back is just plastic and, as you can maybe see, there is some give. So as you can also see, there is a little bit of a curve, a very subtle one. And there is just some gap beneath that. Otherwise, it's fine. There is also just about the same curve also on the front, which you can't maybe see so much, but there is a very subtle curve towards the side. And it definitely feels cool. It feels absolutely nice. Fingerprint reader, I have to say, is one of the slower ones. As you can see here, how long it actually takes. It is reliable, but I don't know why it takes so long, because especially on the Sony Xperia Z3 that I had, the screen turned on so fast, but now there's quite a delay. And the whole unlock process, just gotta say, it's a little bit long. The camera slightly protrudes along with the flash, then the headphone jack, not quite centered, but that's fine. Microphone, here we have the SD card and SIM card tray, which I'm not gonna pull out right now because it would make the phone restart, but this one is actually solid. There is no flimsiness here, where on the Ultra, as you can see, this on my unit is a little bit wobbly. Then USB Type-C, yes, nice to see, definitely. Then the speaker and the microphone, notification LED, camera, quite a big lens, and on-screen buttons. Everything else feels good. So it's not like it would creak or so, because the build quality is fine, especially with the aluminum frame in most places. Not 100% sure what this is. I would say it is aluminum, but don't quote me on that. But the back for sure is plastic. So let's get into the display. And I gotta say, this is actually the strongest part of this display, of this device. Because once I actually found the settings, you have some options, which is actually very nice. You have super vivid mode, standard mode, and off. Use whatever you want to, just for right now. I personally actually chose super vivid mode because actually I have to say, maybe I will go into that a little bit further on in my XA Ultra review, because the XA Ultra has a completely different saturation or overall calibration. Brightness with about 565 lux is though on the very good side. So definitely bright enough. Viewing angles are mostly absolutely fine. No problems here at all. The white was also good. You can of course tweak that as well, as you usually can with the white balance option here in the Sony device. Blacks were also so. There is of course some IPS shift going on, but colors feel nice, and you can, this is very nice, still choose if you want a little bit more punchy, a little bit more vivid colors, or a little bit more natural. So I'm fully pleased with this display. Yes, there is a little bit of a black border around it, and you can obviously already see the bezels. They are quite small on the XA line, but I actually have to say, especially on the XA Ultra, they felt smaller last year, but that's just me. On the top, of course, they are noticeable still, but yeah. About the speaker, let's check that one. The downfiring speaker, I have to say, is just about okay. Nothing more, nothing less. It could be louder, but it gets the job done. It could also sound a little bit richer, and yes, I know about Clear Audio Plus, and it did actually improve things that had to be improved, and it did that, but yeah, it's nothing special. It gets the job done, it's fine. Headphone jack actually is a little bit more disappointing. It's not very loud, it's not very clean or anything. It's okay. I would say average at best. That's where I'm gonna leave it off. I know about the extra settings, and I know a lot about it, but yeah, it doesn't change a fact, and you can see this. This is a fact. Now, performance. Let's kill all apps. And I have to say, the only thing that is a little bit weird is multitasking, but I think that's actually more of an Android Oreo thing, because what I've noticed is that sometimes if you switch from one app to the other, there is still a ghost image of the last app. Oreo thing. Nothing you should really bother about. But once the app is loaded, I have to say, the 630 does a solid job, just about like the 625, and I always said that the 630 wasn't really a step up in terms of performance, but overall, I didn't have many lag. I know a lot of some of my fellow YouTubers that I've spoken with, they said they had a little bit of some issues with the performance. I don't see any of that. In normal use, it's absolutely fine. It's not quite as snappy as the higher end Sony phones, because those are crazy snappy and always were. And let me actually try to find out which phone is doing that sound. Okay, we have it muted, but yeah, multitasking usually with the app works fine. As you can see, it's not very responsive. Sometimes it just takes a little bit of a while to get something done, but the overall experience in daily use is absolutely still fine. No complaints here at all. It is a 630, actually one of the less impressive ones. But that's a margin of like 2 or 3%. So yeah, I don't want to get this too far off. And yeah, the site doesn't want to load, but my Wi-Fi here is super poor sometimes. I don't know why, but yeah, browsing performance, yeah, as you can see, it's absolutely fine. So it is a good device. And especially if you want to see something, for example, here, the app switching. Let's just try this here once again. And no, this is actually not switching between the last two apps. This is just switching between the two apps that I have selected. So my Twitter app and the browser. And as you can see, this is still quite snappy. It doesn't work super fast. I've had Sony phones that did that fast, or other phones, but totally solid level. About the battery life. Now, a full charge with the default settings, with the default charger, takes 2.5 hours, which many might say is too long. But just keep in mind that this is with the default settings, where they have an option enabled that wants to save up the battery and doesn't want to charge too fast. And it kind of, after a while, gets used to your habits when you charge it, and then kind of gets to that level. So that's why it's slower. If you use a quick charger 3.0, it charges actually faster. I did that, but I didn't really check the time so efficiently or properly. So I would say like 1.5 hours around that was a good value. But that charger is just not included. I guess most of us have one by now, but still. Battery life, that one was solid, absolutely on a good level, because I got roughly 5 to 5.5 hours, somewhere in between, on mobile data, and then let's say 1.5 to maybe even 2 hours, more like 1.5 I would say, but at least that on Wi-Fi, and that is a good level. Now the standby drain, on certain days wasn't all that good, but especially on the XA Ultra it was amazing. So the potential here is there. I got also updates, so that's usually on a device that is very close to stock Android, usually very solid, so I wouldn't bother about that. Now, since we have already talked about a clean, solid UI, actually you might complain about the design of my icons, and I know a lot of people will do, but here is the nice thing, and this is something that I just discovered, that this time you can actually use third-party icons. Just third-party launcher icons, and that works, as you can see here. Of course, we have some theming UI. You have standard launcher, as you can see, very typical, but side-scrolling, which is a little bit weird, especially since towards down, nothing happens. Quick settings look a lot like stock Android, but I have also to say, even though there is, for example, like a one-handed mode and the typical options that you have, and this already is running, as you can see, Android 0.0, 8.0, we don't have many options, but as you can also maybe see, especially if you know Sony devices, this UI looks pretty much the same since the very first Z phone. And so for me, it feels like 6 years of the same UI. I think it looks dated by now. It's totally solid, it's clean, it runs very well, it's optimized, and everything it does very good. But a little bit of a refresh would have been nice by now. But what is definitely very good is the update support. On a Sony device, you get updates for a very long time and quite quick. So that's definitely a bonus. Now, what about the camera app? Yes, that one is dated as well. And this is actually not even the most recent one from Sony. Because if you want to access 4K, you can't just do it from the settings. You have to go into this menu and select 4K video. This is a very clumsy way in my opinion. And the overall UI just looks overall the same. It's not the most convenient one, and many options actually just work in the manual mode. And you can't really switch through quickly all that melts. So yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the software. Not in the camera department. But what about the camera's qualities? Let's check that. Selfie cam. Looks okay, but nothing really special because lighting conditions weren't that bad, but it always looks a little bit soft, which is a general thing of this camera. And then you can also see this is the wide angle lens because it has a wider angle, and you can see this, you can enable it in the settings. And then you have though a fisheye, as you can already see, especially on the wall. But other than that, quality is okay, colors look nice, sharpness could be better. Contrast is nice, almost actually a little bit too much. Inside things get even more washed out, even more blurry, which is sad to see. I never really got an extremely crisp picture, which is quite disappointing. Especially also that the XA Ultra, or especially low light, takes a lot of emphasis on the front-facing cam. But as you can see the pics, yeah, not really one great one. Also for the low light, not really because it kind of seems to try to boost the contrast and makes things look nicer, but then a lot of details get lost. Plus the fact that it's blurry and a little bit noisy. Yeah. Outside, okay, the weather was the same. Not amazing as for the last few months. Yeah, but the problem for me, at least on macros, was the autofocus. As you can see, so many pictures. And I can't remember the last time I had a phone with so many bad pictures. And I would have said, yeah, okay, if I can use tap to focus, things are fine. But tap to focus had a failure rate of 100%. Or let's say 95. Let's give it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Because every time I tried on a macro, tap to focus, it completely got out of focus. I'm not quite sure why. Because if you have a proper object, it can see. It gets the focus usually quite right, but never really 100% right, it feels to me. Never any picture looks absolutely sharp, which is just weird. And the same actually in some ways goes for the video, because if you check the video here, this is 1080p 60, you can see it looks smooth. Also never really sharp, so in overall the video and general also photos look quite soft. And I know I'm complaining too much, but I expected more from Sony. And Sony, this is still one of their biggest issues that they have to get used to. They have to improve the camera quality because their lenses are great and superior auto is just not doing what it should be. Now, okay, 4K looks a little bit better, but not really that much. And the problem actually on this cam, once again, as also the macros, is the autofocus. It works smoother in 4K especially, but also doesn't really do a great job. It still can't get many things in focus anyways. Here, once again, this is an object that usually can work. So yeah, I have to say I'm disappointed. Inside, also, a little bit of some blur while moving. This is actually with the normal cam, so very close, quite a big crop. Quality is fine, but yeah, nothing special. And now let's try the same with the wide angle. So this is a good distance. Still, quality isn't anything amazing, and especially low light, you will see now, quality will heavily degrade. And I really mean heavily, as you can see here. Yeah, especially the camera, weirdly disappointing. But let's get to the conclusion. I like a few things, like for example the inner feel is nice. Okay, the design is not everyone's thing and the bezels are not like 2017 or 2018 like modern small, not yet an 18:9 display or 2:1, but it feels good. The ergonomics are fine with the buttons and all that. We have a nice display. The speaker gets the job done. Performance, not blown away. Good average mid-range level, like pretty much any 625 phone, but those can be got quite cheap by these days. Battery is solid, even though for this battery size, I expected more from Sony. Usually they deliver more battery life for a battery size, and this is actually a quite big one already in here with 3300. So totally solid but good. Software, like I said, a little bit dated, but it gets the job done. The camera, I think, will be a letdown for most people, especially someone who maybe thinks about getting something like an A8, which is still, at least in some regions, more expensive. But they have to work on their software. The software for the camera needs some work. It's not really convenient. Especially the results. I don't know why I got so many bad ones. This is disappointing. Doesn't change the fact that it is not a bad phone, but as you also seen in the ratings, a lot of 3.5 stars, which means this phone is very, very average in many aspects. But the price of 350, at least for now, until it drops a little bit further, which I think it has to, unless they wanna, in case they wanna sell some, it needs to get cheaper. Because if I wouldn't have known the price and if I've just gotten this to review and no, it's still Sony, I would have still expected this to be closer to 250. At best 300, still thinking though it should be cheaper. So for 250, it's a nice phone with still the camera being its kind of biggest flaw. Focus issues, soft video and such. But I know it sounded very negative, but this is a very objective opinion with pros and cons. And I know usually people don't want to hear cons, but I just have to tell it what it is now. I think actually the Ultra is a little bit better in some aspects. Which ones those are, I will cover in that review. But for now, that's it. I have to say I had higher expectations, but they just didn't get nearly fulfilled. Even though, that's actually one thing I have to say. If you're just a normal user who just wants a nice experience and you like Sony phones, this still does the job because the display was nice and the normal use experience, which after all for many people who aren't all that much into watching reviews, watching all those comparisons and getting all the nitty-diddle details and don't really care about some minor flaws, they will still get fully satisfied. That's not the issue. That's not the issue, but competition these days, at least in this department, is so strong that this one just needs to do something better. Either drop the price noticeably or you can't change anything yet anymore, so that's the thing. If they improve the camera heavily, then things are different. Yeah, okay. That's it. And now you can hate on me. Okay, until next time. Bye.